The date is August 13th, 2012. The time is 6:35 p.m. Gary Ciccarone,
Here.
Rick Charette,
Present.
Steve Machowski,
Here.
Ed Nason,
Present.
Jim Freeman, Rob Collins,
Here.
Clifton Camp. I was told that he's going to be tardy today. He will be here. Ed Comeau,
Here.
okay, Jim Freeman is absent.
Would you consent to be Jim? All right, you're Jim. Unless Jim shows up, you fill the shoes. Okay. Everybody's got an agenda. We're going to do this first. We've got correspondence and mail. We have a town and city here that, and some other things that are pertinent to what we do. And you're welcome to take them and look through them at some point tonight. The Greenway Gazette, Town and City, and a couple other publications. And we have, so I'll find it here, a letter from RC&D, which is Resource Conservation and Development, Southern New Hampshire RC&D Area Council. This is the Planning Board Chairman sample packet. This has to do with the a copy of the Rural Fire Water Resource Plan developed for this town by New Hampshire Rural Fire Protection Initiative. The plan and other pertinent information in the form of a binder and CD have been sent to the town administrator and intended for the fire department. It contains information on site evaluation, dry hydrant purchase and installation, fire protection easements, the jurisdiction and requirements of New Hampshire Department of Environmental Services Wetlands Bureau, ISO information, and wetland urban interface materials. The enclosed plan is to provide to you as a courtesy of New Hampshire Rural Fire Protection Initiative. It is the intention of the NH Home Security and Emergency Management Plan that the Rural Fire Water Resource Plan be used to update your hazard mitigation plan. We hope everything included here is satisfactory and proves useful to the town. It was our pleasure to work with you and the fire department while mapping your water supply sites. Your assistance was critical to the completion of this project. If you have any questions, comments, or require assistance, please contact me at the North Country RC&D address and phone number listed below. Sincerely, Patricia Tarpey, Rural Fire Administration GIS Technician. And the following is the Rural Fire Water Resource Plan. And if any of you would like a copy of this, I really don't think it should leave the building, the original, but we can, if you take a brief look at it and you want a copy of it, we'll be happy to, Jim, you're here. You'll have to go back to being Ed. We'll be happy to make a copy for anybody that wants to take a copy. Otherwise, we can review it in the building here tonight. So these things will be on the desk. Anybody that wants it at some point. Okay. Onward. Public comments. Opportunities to comment from the public will be provided at this time. A matter is discussed by show of hand and recognition by the chairperson, as long as doing so will not disrupt the meeting. So, that being said, we're going to go on to minutes review, and then we'll go into other businesses, and the public can make comments if they'd like. You weren't here. Were you here?
No, I was not here.
That's right. Anybody see any anomalies? I don't.
Make a motion to accept the minutes as presented.
Second.
Any other discussion? Nope. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstentions?
Abstain.
There, so be it. Meetings are accepted, or the minutes of the meeting are accepted, okay. Old business,
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
I was not at the last meeting, and I read the minutes, but there was one thing that wasn't entirely clear to me. Are the rules of procedure, the changes were accepted?
yes, they were.
Okay, so, according to our rules of procedure, after approval of any amendments, this is in, I don't know, section 20.
Right.
After approval of any amendments, the chair shall file a copy of the amended rules with the town clerk, provide a copy to the Board of Selectmen, and provide a copy to each board member and alternate.
That's being done.
Okay, just want to make, so it's not,
Yeah. Did Virginia sign it yet?
No.
She will, she's busy. But we've decided to have her sign it and do it that way. And the amendment, right, as an amendment. And,
Yes, the comprehensive, appendix B was amended. That's
yeah,
correct.
just as the amendment, which is a legitimate way to do it, and it's the simpler way. We're not altering the entire procedure, just the amendment,
the appendix.
the appendix.
Okay, so what does that mean exactly?
Well, it means that she's going to sign the changes to the appendix. And that,
Okay.
Well,
it,
I apologize. On page 16, you and I had an email conversation on this, Rob. On page 16 where she signed it, that's the only thing, as far as the whole document, pages 1 through 16, nothing was changed. The only thing
Right.
that will be changed, since she does sign page 16, is the revision date on pages 1 through 16. The revision date, pages 1 through 16, will be the same as the revision date on Appendix B. Okay? And then, of course, all the changes that we approved with Appendix B.
and that's what she will sign.
Okay, but the footer is going to change on the first part of the document as well?
Yes, it will,
Okay,
because she
good.
signs that, and yes,
Yeah, because I think it would be confusing if it said 2009 or whatever.
yes.
Okay. My little brain wouldn't be able to keep up with that. Okay, so so at some point, maybe at the next meeting, maybe we'll have a new copy of that.
That's correct.
Okay.
For everybody, yeah. At some point, 3 planning boards from now, when they go to revise that again, they'll be wondering how we did what we did.
Yep.
But that's,
Okay.
then, this is now.
Thanks. I'm just trying to channel Tom,
Yeah.
keep us on track. That's all. Somebody's got to, I guess.
Good
Okay.
job.
Thank you.
Okay, old business, CIP. We can work on that, but I'm going to report something to the board that we spoke of last meeting.
One thing, it's, Ed been relieved and I've been replaced, put back in.
Yes,
That's all official already.
Yes, that was done at- That was done at 6:39.
yes, I said, Jim, you're here, and I asked Ed to become Ed again.
involved.
We had discussed last time the phrase that's in our ordinance about cottage industry and home-based business, that what is prohibited,
What is not
permitted is prohibited. And I talked to Laura Spector about that briefly. I didn't waste a lot of time, but she was pretty clear. That particular phrase that was installed by the planning board at the time was really irrelevant. It meant nothing then, and removing it means nothing now because that's state law. That's precisely how the state law is worded, just about verbatim. Only they have a few more things in there than we actually have in our ordinance. Which brings us to the point that there's no action we could take concerning that particular phrase that's in our minutes or in our ordinance that would do any good for the town whatsoever, and we'd be wasting our time on it. However, after talking to Laura and digesting all of this stuff, I came to the conclusion, it's only my conclusion now, but that Rob here was exactly on the right track about a year ago or a little better when he was constructing what he constructed that had to do with home-based business. If we wish, the way it's set up now, and it is set up throughout the entire state, this way that with that clause in there, home-based business is not codified in any ways except for the prohibited items that we have in there. 12 brood sows, no automotive, and a few other items. We don't have to repeat them. Which means that everything else is subject to being decided on at a given time at the whim of whoever has the reins of the town at that moment. And that there is nothing codified about a home-based business other than the things that are in the ordinance. So, it would behoove this board, if it's willing to take it on, to help codify that so that it is a little more concrete. And Rob did a lot of work on it, and a couple of unruly members of the board kind of stopped that in its track, and maybe not to such a good end. And that, I've mentioned this to all of you briefly, and I've asked Rob so he wouldn't be blindsided tonight, if we could resuscitate the work that he did and take a look at it, again, as a board. And in that way, perhaps make it a little bit better for the town than it is now, because the way it stands now, it isn't the greatest. It's pretty subject to change by whoever happens to be running the select board at the time, to be honest with you. And I think that we should take a good look at it, and in that way, we should work on that this year. If we can get it done, I feel that that's a pretty sizable accomplishment for the board, considering that Rob's already done most of the work.
I got a question, Mr. Chairman. Who in town permits and prohibits?
Well, it's not a matter of you read the ordinance, if it's not permitted, it's prohibited.
Right.
And the ordinance has
Who does the permitting and the
The
prohibiting?
ordinance should.
the ordinance should do it.
Right.
However, it's subject to the whim of the selectmen, because and the code officer, but the selectmen basically are the enforcement body.
The ordinance should do it, and the ordinance is not doing it.
That's right.
So it deserves our attention, it deserves some work.
Agreed. I think so. And
What part of this would fall under the zoning board of appeals?
well, the zoning board of appeals function is to resolve questions that someone who is either in violation of zoning or there's a quasi interpretation of zoning, they can go to the zoning board of appeals and try to get something passed that the town will
Let's
accept.
say I start a business in my house, and small manufacturing, light manufacturing. And my neighbor doesn't like it for one reason or another, maybe it makes too much noise. So he goes to the selectmen and complains about it. I go to the zoning board of appeal and say, it's a way of making a living. Well, what do you want me to do? What can I do? One-man operation, I'm making a little sawdust and whatever. Where does that go?
Well, the zoning board of appeals has the right, depending on who's on the zoning board of appeals, and that's not an elected body, incidentally, that's an appointed body in this town. It can be elected, and it could be elected if we, the planning board, were to make it so. We would have to put that before the town for a vote at the meeting, and then that could be an elected position in town. At this point, it's not. So the ZBA determines whether or not it's legal, and they have the right to, that's after the selectmen have given you a cease and desist.
Right.
Then you would go then to the ZBA and ask for relief. And they either give it to you or don't give it to you. And that's at the end of the question at that point, unless the laws are changed. That's it.
Actually, if you're not happy with the ZBA,
We can go
then
to
you go,
court.
then you go to Superior Court.
Yes, you can do that.
Or the selectmen could be unhappy with what the ZBA did and go to Superior Court.
Right.
Right, so Superior Court, and then if you're not happy with Superior Court, you can go to Supreme Court,
Right.
the New Hampshire Supreme Court.
So none of that is reflected in this home occupation.
Nothing, read it. I mean, I'm very familiar with it. What I'm describing to you with the ZBA has happened in this town before. And people were denied particular uses of their property based on ZBA decisions. And one time, in fact, that happened, and it was taken to court about 17 years ago, and the court found in favor of the individual, and that was the Boats, what's his name?
Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
Yeah. He took the town to court, and the court found in favor of the individual, and the town had to allow him to do his,
Oh,
Bernard, right. Bernard.
What was his business?
restoring old boats.
Restoring boats. It was a work in progress, and he had a couple of dozen of them out there, all shrink wrap. But anyway, the point is, there's not much redress for anyone here, and there's nothing that sets any guidelines, except for those few things that are prohibited. We have the 12 brood sows and the automotive and a few other things, and I think, guidelines can either loosen the ordinance or restrict it more. I mean, it's just a matter of where the board wants to take it. Where it sits now, it's absolutely up to, except for those items that are prohibited, and the items that are permitted, and that's quasi, because you permit home-based business without specification, we have a set of circumstances that makes it arbitrary. And it can be determined ultimately in Superior Court, but it is determined first on the local level. So,
Well, my feeling on this is the more vague you keep your permitted uses, the better off the individual will be in the long run for starting a business.
hold on for a minute. I agree in a way. I'm not thinking that we should list, we're going to talk about this as a board, but I'm not saying we should list all the things that are permitted and all the things that are prohibited. But what you can do is you can outline guidelines for a business that's allowed in a home that makes all businesses that fall within those guidelines permittable, or the ones that fall outside the guidelines prohibited. So the guidelines are the only thing you can really do without making a list of 8 million different businesses, and I'm not suggesting we go there because I don't think that's going to be productive. Sure.
So I appreciate the sentiment behind your statement that be vague, right? Vague is good.
Yes.
The problem is that vague is good if you have a board of selectmen that wants to let you do stuff, right? Now, if you look at
That's determined by the electorate.
I understand, but, one guy may be
Yeah.
screwed because the majority rules, right? And I think that there's only a few home-based businesses that you clearly could not lose ultimately, in Superior Court. Those would be offices of recognized professions,
Yep.
bed and breakfast, and that's about it. I think cottage industry is not well defined, and your cottage industry may be, some board of selectmen's, small, large industry. I don't know. I mean, so I think that what I proposed last year, what I was trying to do, was basically say very clearly, every business is eligible to be a home-based business at an appropriate size, right? And in that way, be very specific, any business, but be very broad by making it cover everything. And that's just a question of, for that particular business, is it too big to fit in with a residential area? And that, we could try to nail that down either with like traffic counts and noise level, whatever, or we could just leave it up to the selectman and the code enforcement officer to use judgment. But they'd have to defend a decision to shut somebody down by saying that it was too big, the scale of it was a problem, or it was a nuisance or something like that. They couldn't just arbitrarily say, the zoning doesn't allow it, you can't do it. Which today they can't, right? So that would be the difference.
Well, basically, setting perimeters on the size and the number of people that are involved.
Sure, there's a bunch of ways to say, have generic limits.
Okay.
That would protect the
Can I interrupt for a second?
residential section.
Mm-hmm.
Can I interrupt? Go ahead, Jim, and then I will.
My feelings on it is that without any type of proper guidelines, we do kind of leave our residents and citizens of this town blowing in the political winds. I mean, one time you have a board that would approve a certain type of business, another maybe living next to them don't want the noise, and may disapprove it. So we'd have to have something a little more concrete for our citizens to rely on.
Okay, if we're gonna take this on, I wanna set up a set of ground rules for us to take it on with. Because as a board, all of us have a tendency sometimes to bloviate, and I'm more guilty than most of you.
Yeah.
So, okay, a good way to do this is, if we want to actually get some work done, Rob's done a lot of work on this, it's all good stuff, let's resuscitate it and let's knock it around. And let's set up a little set of ground rules on how long someone's going to be able to speak on a particular given subject. 1 minute, 2 minutes, 3 minutes, whatever. Then that should cover most points that everybody has, and then we go on to someone else speaking and someone else speaking. That way we all get our opinions viewed, and we can revisit it again. But if we keep it down to a dull roar, which I'm not doing right now, this way we're not going to sit here and bloviate all night and get nothing done. I think we can work it that way without actually pulling out a stopwatch. Everybody would kind of keep that. You got a point, get it out, and then somebody else may have an answer for that. They get a couple of minutes to describe, and then so on and so forth. How does that sound here?
I'll time that.
You want to time it? You got a stopwatch.
I got a clock right
Got
there.
a clock right there.
I think that we just need the timer on Gary.
Well, I'll time that. I'd suggest.
Hey, if you want the chair for this, you could run the
No,
this particular
I don't.
portion of it, because you've done all the work. I'd be no problem moving.
5-minute limit.
So, what we've got here is we've got Rob's work done to date. We've printed it out. Where is it, George? Which pile? I think it's this one here. No,
It's just no.
this one here. Everybody take one.
Gary, you want to send a couple down here?
Yes, I do. Here.
Got one?
Hey, you got one.
I still need one.
Thank you.
You still need one.
Thank you.
Okay.
Man, this looks familiar.
So, let's take a minute and review it. You don't probably need to, but
Well, Mr. Chairman, I actually put together some notes because you give me a heads up. I've spent a bunch of time not only looking at zoning, but I'm wondering if it wouldn't, I'm happy to drop this if you don't want to talk about this, but I was thinking that it might be helpful to take a step backward and not look at specifically home occupation wording or anything like that, but just, there's been this question that I think we've all struggled with of how permissive zoning works and accessory uses. Eddie raised a wonderful question. I don't remember what the example was, but it's like, how come our zoning doesn't say you can garden, but you know, everyone's allowed to garden? Of course you're allowed to garden, right? Or whatever, or mow your lawn, or there's all sorts of, you know, landscape your yard. There's all sorts of things that the courts have ruled that are allowed as accessory uses by common law. And anyway, I've got some notes. If you want to go over, I mean, you can just take a quick look at it and see if it's something you want to cover tonight, or maybe we can just hand it out.
I think we ought to hand it out. Mr. Administrator, yeah,
So-
put one in everybody's hand.
So this is,
At least 7, I'd probably make 10. There's some people.
so,
I count 12.
so just when you get it, it's not stuff that I made up. I found some documents that I have links on there. They're from LGC. It's their summaries, their quoting, and plus most of it's, almost all of it's quotes from them with a little bit of organization from me. So you can go look at the source documents, they're not that long. And they're
Okay.
referencing Supreme Court decisions, which you can go and, those are all online as well. You can go and read the decision yourself if you want to.
Okay,
If you're,
time's up.
I'm done.
Let's read this thing anyway. You've done the work, and except for the unruly guys that squashed it, let's take a look at it anyway.
Mr. Chairman, may I make a 10-second comment?
1,000. Go ahead.
This working document that's been handed, or what was a working document that's been handed out, I will not be insulted at all if anyone or everyone wants to tear it apart and build it up again. The whole idea was to bring something that we can work with and figure out what we want as a board. And so from my point of view, the whole thing is subject to whatever changes we want, and I'm 100% behind that.
You're on 30 seconds, but that's okay.
I'm done.
Well, I'll tell you what, I don't think anybody here is worried about hurting your feelings.
Good.
Okay. Anyway, so, we're all here, are we all in agreement about keeping this down to as brief a comment as we can? I think we are. Let's take a shot at it, and let's look at what Rob's done here and talk about it for a minute and see what everybody's got on their mind. Proposed. Home occupation, home-based business subject to following conditions. Let's take a look at number 1. Property owner of record manager or lessee shall live in any structure used as a bed and breakfast. Let's talk about it individually quickly. Anybody, we all have ideas about it.
So the intent was to keep that restriction from our existing zoning. That restriction on bed and breakfast is in our existing zoning.
Right. I see the point, it keeps absentee.
Excuse me.
That prevents it from being a hotel.
Yeah. Anybody else want to talk about that one? It's already in the zoning ordinance, I see no reason to change it.
Okay with it.
All right. Adequate off-street parking with safe ingress and egress of vehicles shall be available. That I think we should talk about.
That's straight from our zoning, the existing zoning.
Yeah.
First sentence of the second paragraph of item B.
Let me say a quick thing about that. Adequate's a very poor way to describe anything, because adequate is subject to interpretation by whoever. What kind of guidelines are adequate off-street parking with safe ingress and egress of vehicles? Anybody could change their mind about what sight line is adequate, or what adequate parking is, and that would all have to do with how many vehicles are at a business at any given time.
If you consult with the police department, if you park on the side of the road, as long as you're on the off side or the shoulder side of the white line, you're adequately off the road. So that's, if you have a question on that, that's where you would want to
That's what the police department specified.
Yep.
Correct.
Okay, so we're going to adopt that, I presume, by,
Oh, we can
with the
take-
word adequate.
We could take adequate right off. It wouldn't even change the sentence or the statement.
Yeah, I think adequate might go. Off-street parking with safe ingress and egress of vehicles shall be available.
If you take adequate off, it won't be subject to someone's interpretation.
Of adequate.
Mr. Chairman. That would, I would think, would also depend on what type of business. I mean, if it's something where, say, doing boat repair, somebody drops off a boat, you don't have a lot of people coming to look at your wares, say. That's something that you might want
Well, then,
So adequate, because adequate may be zero.
to, adequate may be zero.
Right, so if it, without the word adequate, I mean, it requires all businesses to provide off-street parking with safe ingress and egress, right? It may be you're on a terrible corner, and there is no safe ingress and egress from your property, but nobody comes there for that business, right? I think this, I'm okay with taking off adequate. I would leave it on, because that's not a scary kind of interpretation, right? I think adequate, the courts aren't gonna go wacky on you. If you get selectmen who are overly restrictive, you're gonna get relief from the courts, I think.
okay,
But I can go either way. I'm not. don't
okay,
trust them.
everybody,
I would, excuse me, I would agree with Rob, leaving the adequate there, because my example would be if you have a large vehicle that can get off the white line but is next to the road, it may be blocking the view of somebody coming out of a driveway or something, and that even though it's adequately off the street, it may not be adequate for the people using the premises. Do you see what I'm saying? I mean, your line of sight when you exit a driveway, if it's blocked by vehicles parked on either side, but they're off the white line, but they're not allowing the person leaving a driveway, so I think you need that interpretation, that flexibility in there.
okay, Jim, you're who, Ed, you had,
I retract.
Rick, you,
The parking should be able to service the business where the parking is being done. So instead of adequate, you'd have off-street parking with safe ingress and egress to vehicles shall be available and suitable to the business being run. So that,
well, the police are saying that the shoulder of the road is adequate, it's okay. So, that may be the only parking available, depends on the premises,
okay, well, off-street parking to me suggests off the street, down a driveway. Not off on the side of the
Well,
road.
that may be, but I mean, it may not. It could just be shoulder parking.
So why don't you eliminate off-street, adequate parking with safe ingress and egress of vehicles?
Yeah,
That kind of sums it up. As long as it's safe and it's,
Well, let's take some notes on this, because we're not gonna make these determinations in one meeting in one night. And
Okay.
we're just running through what Rob's done, we might have other stuff.
well, the idea is to not leave it open to interpretation for an individual, right?
Also, if you take off adequate or something equivalent to that, and you just leave it as off-street parking or parking with safe ingress and egress, you have to somehow cover the fact that they have to not only have provided a spot for parking, but that it has to be enough for the business they're running.
Exactly.
Right, which is what Rick was saying. It's like, it's not enough to, the adequate sort of can cover a bunch of different aspects, right? But I think that you want to make sure that you don't make the restriction just, you got to provide parking. It has to be enough parking. It has to be safe,
Is
right?
that-
And
Yeah.
so it has to be, anyway.
I agree. The only thing you have to take into consideration is that, let's say you're doing an agricultural home-based business, which really is permissive in this town because we're an agricultural town. Some of the days, you got a lot of people there at 4 o'clock in the afternoon. Most of the time, you don't. If we get too structured, 11 people come for jelly jars at 4 o'clock on a coincidence on one day. It becomes a hill to die on if somebody wants to get really upset over that one moment in time, and I think that we don't want to get restrictive that way. In other words, do we say 15 cars is too much? Well, that may happen. You might get 15 cars. But you're not gonna have 15 cars in Brookfield every day, all day long. It's just never gonna happen. But anyway, enough, time's up.
I agree with you. At the same time, we want to make sure it's safe, right? We don't want somebody to die on that one bad
Adequate,
day.
it covers volume and safety.
Okay, well, I've made notes on this. We're gonna go back to it. Let's just run through the whole thing, and then maybe there's other things
Three.
people wanna add. I don't know.
Move to 3.
That's where we're going. External storage of occupational equipment and supplies shall be screened from view of abutters in the right of way.
I say we skip that one and go to 4. That's good. I have a lot of problem with that one. That one's gonna be a big topic, I think.
So the reason that that's there so if you look at our existing zoning, it says external storage of occupational equipment and supplies will be screened from view either by fencing or dense vegetation. So I kept the general restriction there, but tried to make how it's screened more flexible,
It's already there, yeah.
right?
I meant to say
What I was trying to do was not arbitrarily change the existing zoning, except in particular places, right? So I didn't, each of these oddball one-off restrictions I tried to keep in here. I'm happy, in general, if some or all those get struck, but I mean, that's why I put it in there. And
Oh, I don't have a problem with you putting it there.
It's already
It's
there.
just whether we leave it there or not.
Well,
Or do we leave it in its present form?
Well, we're gonna go through all these, and then we're gonna go back and work on them. It's just an idea, we're putting it all on the floor. We don't wanna take a whole year to get through item number 3. So,
But rather than skip it, I mean, do you have the 30-second objection to it, or how you'd like to
30
change
seconds?
it? Or whatever. 2 minutes, whatever it is.
My off-the-cuff right is, that's a wide-open problem, because how tall is the fence gonna have to be? If you got a guy down in a low area, has got occupational equipment in his yard, and he may have an 8-foot fence around it, but he happens to live at the bottom of the hill, so when somebody crests the hill, they look out in his yard and go, oh, look at that guy does this, that, or the other thing, but it's not hidden from my view. I mean, there's gotta be a different way to word that. I understand what's trying to be done. It's not that I disagree with that, but I just think it's gonna,
time's up. Cliff?
In regards to that as well, if you have a company truck that you park in your driveway, and it has the wording of your business on the side of it, you're in violation. So you would absolutely have to screen your whole front yard and your driveway so people couldn't pass and see that truck, even though that's the only piece of equipment that you might have for your business. So,
Yeah, a lot of towns in their zoning have exceptions for that particular case, and I think that it'd be very, I understand that. I'm just saying that it's pretty common to see out there.
Okay, well, Rob wrote this, so I'm kinda giving him a little bit of latitude to
Right.
get in and explain stuff. Go ahead, then, Eddie, you got your hand up too? Go ahead, Rick.
Also on 3, the right-of-way, I mean, most of the roads around here are rights-of-way, and you grant someone permission to pass by your property, and now you gotta screen your occupation from them because you're letting them go by?
That includes the water too, the shoreline, by the way, because it's a legal right of way.
Right of way here means the road, right? Not a.
We own the roads.
No, I understand. I'm just saying the idea would be people driving down the road can't see your stuff,
So-
like Eddie said.
Ed.
I don't like 3 at all. If we're zoned agricultural, it's nobody's business.
Oh, all of this stuff has nothing to do with agricultural. Even if we had exactly that in there, you could park your tractor right in the middle of your front yard in front of everybody because your tractor's agricultural, right? This doesn't affect, you can do there's 2 primary uses that you can have in that zone. Agricultural, which this has nothing to do with, and residential, which this would be secondary uses, accessory uses to residential.
Okay, Cliff.
right-of-ways aren't just strictly your roads, it's any path or driveway that goes through a piece of property to give people access to another piece of property that is landlocked behind you.
And any shoreline in the state of New Hampshire is considered a legal right of way too. That can be addressed, and you could address the vehicle part. We already have about registered vehicles in another portion of the zoning. If you have a truck and it's registered and your name's on it, well, Anybody else on this? Ed?
I just want to throw my own property out there as an example. I consume about 3 acres for my sand pit, and there's no way I'm going to be able to hide that from people's view.
I can't see it.
You never come past my house.
So,
Can't see it from my house.
That's good, it works now, but
Let me tell you.
that's
what
the example that I'm thinking.
I can tell you where this came from. That particular one, I was on the planning board in '96 when that was added. And when it was added, it was done because there was a member of the board who proposed this because they'd had a lot of trouble, and I don't want to get too deep into this, with the next door neighbor. The next door neighbor had tractor trailers there, and he was out in the back shooting shotguns off all day and all night. And that's where this was born. This was born in '96 or '7, I don't remember what year. That doesn't mean it can't be put to death, but we're talking about it now. Everybody should, just got this in their hand. I want everybody to think about these things and what the ramifications are, and we'll go back to them. I basically don't want to spend 4 hours on this tonight. I want to run through this, everybody get a look at it, think about it, and we'll go back to it another night. There's a couple of things else I want to handle tonight and make sure that we get done this year if we can. So, everybody's, want to say anything more on number 3?
Just one thought, just so that people don't get the wrong idea from what Eddie said. Any change that we make will not affect existing uses. So, I mean, you're saying it's a totally non-conforming use and it's grandfathered, back however long, right? But any existing use will be grandfathered against any changes in the future, right? So we could change the zoning today to say that you can't, do X, Y, and Z. If you're doing X, Y, and Z today, you're fine forever, as long as you don't try to expand it.
Or stop doing it for 1 year.
Yeah.
Okay, number 4. The number of persons engaged in the on-site occupation of any one or combination of home occupants and home-based businesses shall not be more than 4, excluding the residents.
That's been fine.
So I actually tweaked the wording here to add on the on-site operation from the existing zoning to the what I'm proposing. When we had public comment at some point, I think it was maybe Steve Patrick, is that his name?
Yeah.
I think he had a comment that was basically, well, what if I have 10 independent contractors?
That was my comment.
Was that your comment?
Yep.
What if I have 10 independent contractors that never come to my house, but they're my employee, or they're my employees rather than independent contractors? Am I forbidden from doing this? And the idea of the on-site operation was that's where the impact is, and we want to keep, we should make it specific to that, not just the fact that you have employees elsewhere.
Well, there's another comment I had too. Let's just say you make jelly, and you got 4 people helping you make jelly. And those 4 people work from 8 o'clock in the morning till 4 o'clock in the afternoon, and then you have 4 different people come in from 4 o'clock in the evening to midnight and make jelly with you. And they're 4 different people than the 4 people that were there earlier. That is in violation of this particular wording as well, because you have 8 people, but you never have more than 4 on the site at one given time. So that's something else we have to consider and how we want to word that. The true intent of this clause would be to keep it down to a smaller business so that people aren't manufacturing with 20 people at one time. So does having 4 people on a second shift really affect or change the jelly making? It's just something we need to consider. Yeah, Cliff.
It not only was meant to keep and restrict the amount of personnel that you have working and becoming a large manufacturing company by having 20 people making jelly. We'll stick with the jelly thing for right now. But it also was meant to restrict hours of operation, so you weren't running a second and a third shift around the clock with 4 employees each shift. This has already been debated a couple of times in the past.
But we all
Those are the
discussed,
points that kept being brought up.
we discussed hours of operation. That doesn't necessarily mean you're making jelly, you have to be open for sale and have people in and out.
I understand that.
I could have a booze party all night with shifts and have wild, drunken, crazy people running around, and that's not against the ordinance.
Employees.
No, it's different, but the point is,
Are you
what
paying
you're
them?
trying to restrict or what are you not trying to restrict? The issue is the issue of having people come in the property and out of the property at 11 o'clock at night. Now that's, a flow of business traffic. That's what we need to discuss. What's the intent? Before we, anyway, anybody else?
Where did no more than 4 come from?
There's somebody
That was a number
arbitrary,
that was pulled out of the air way back when this was written.
arbitrary.
Well, I don't like that it's just 4. I mean, we're crushing business, we should be, making people,
That's for non-residents. I'm not disagreeing with
And
you.
if you're lucky like Ed, and you've got 10 kids.
I can have 14 people working. Actually, I can have 16 people working.
Have you got relatives
St.
too?
George's and child labor laws too.
now you can refer back to number 2, if you have adequate street parking or off-street parking and egress, then it doesn't matter how many people you have there if they can get it out safe, so. Why 4? I don't think-
Again, Mr. Chair, again, it was to restrict the amount of people you have working on your property at any given time, and to restrict how many hours a day you actually would be working. Most people aren't gonna work 4 people more than 12 hours in a day.
We have a member of the public that wishes to make a comment. Go ahead, we'll accept that.
Thank you. One other consideration would be that once you hit 5 employees, you now fall under the New Hampshire Department of Safety and need to do all of those rules as well, as far as forming a joint loss management committee, having safety meetings, yada, yada, yada.
4 is a good number.
I have a question for you. You're familiar with this law, that's why you brought it up. Does that law state employees on a premises at one time, or is that a aggregate?
It depends on who you're talking to at the state. I'll give you the example of the town. We had a representative from that department come to this office 2-3 years ago, and he defines an employee as broadly as a ballot clerk for this town.
Who works once or
Who
twice
works
a year.
once or twice a year.
That's an employee.
Yeah, but that person isn't the lawmaker, he's one guy with an opinion.
But he is what the state sends out to uphold that law.
And he'll be the
You
one
have
that
to
sends
go
you the
to
letter
court
with the
on that
fine money.
I think we'll stick with 4. It's the easiest thing to do here.
We are talking home businesses.
Also, the ZBA still exists, even if we change the zoning, and if you had something where it was totally reasonable to have 10 employees, you'd still be subject to their whim, but you could go and try to get them to, okay, you're 10 employees.
No, you can have 10 employees, or you can have 6 employees.
Right.
What she's saying is, the moment that you cross that line from 4 to 5,
The
you
state's
now
involved.
have to comply with all the state laws and rules about employers, and file all the forms, create the committees, have the meetings, blasey, blasey, blasey. So you can have as many employees as you want.
There's a simple
But that's
way,
That threshold.
there's a simple way around that, and that's
That
you.
may be why you chose 4, was my thought.
Okay, it's very possible. There's an easy legal way around that, and that's to employ people as subcontractors, as long as they're not working by the hour if they bill you. There's IRS guidelines for what a subcontractor versus an employee is, and that can be done to get around that particular thing. But that may be why. We can go and figure out if you want 6 or 8 at another time. It's just, we're going through this right now, and I'd like to cover them all tonight.
Let's get on to the next one then.
And get on to the next one, and then we'll come back at this again, after everybody's digested and thought about it.
Okay. Fine.
The residential agricultural character of the district shall be maintained.
I have a comment. In whose opinion? And this is New England, so what is the character? You've got everything, you've got everything from very small, plain, simple, to extravagant. I mean, that's New England.
If you're gonna have a business, you gotta at least have a farm animal.
Ed,
This goes back to the master plan again. If the master plan, does the master plan say that we have to maintain an agricultural character?
Yes,
Well, that's where this is coming from.
A rural agricultural character.
And who has control over the master plan?
This
Planning
board,
Okay, thank you.
the other thing about that I see, the residential agricultural character of the district shall be maintained. There's all kinds of conundrums in that, because the guy that, he's a contractor, and somewhere out behind his house, he parks his bulldozer. That doesn't really have too much to do with the residential agricultural character of the district. Even though he's not even using the bulldozer on the site, he may be just putting it behind his house. And it may be screened from view, but that doesn't, part of the time. The point is, that's a tough one, number 5, because it's so vague. Go ahead, Rob.
I don't disagree that it's vague. This kind of thing is really common in zoning ordinances. And I think the intent may not be hitting the mark on that one, but the intent is so that you don't have, instead of a house, you have something that, I'm gonna use the word McDonald's, looks like a McDonald's, right? You don't want something that looks, you don't want the property to be completely commercial.
You don't want it industrial.
You don't want it to look like
Or
a
a
strip
factory,
mall
yeah.
or something like that. You want it to look like a house. You want, if somebody was driving down the street, they'd be like, maybe there's something a little, something a little extra going on, but it still looks like a house or a farm or something like that, right? But that's sort of the intent. It may not, like I said, it may not hit the mark.
I agree.
But it's,
So we all get it. I mean,
Residential agriculture character as opposed to commercial.
Yeah, you don't want an industrial park, you don't want a commercial zone. So the intent was to keep it as open space and as looking as rural as possible without looking industrialized.
so,
Okay.
the original wording was the outside residential character of the property shall be maintained. I changed that wording a little. I tried to soften it a little bit. Because if you strictly required the outside residential character of the property to be maintained, then you have to, if you get really strict, it has to be indistinguishable from a residence, which a lot of reasonable home occupations, you're gonna be able to tell that there's extra sawdust, right, or whatever, right, from whatever it is you're doing, your light manufacturing, which I think most of us probably think is perfectly fine, but it may not look exactly like a residence, right? So anyway, so I did change the wording there, and with the intent of trying to soften that a little bit, but that's.
Residential agricultural character.
anybody else? Rick?
Home-based
I
occupations
think Rob did a good
attached
job on 5.
Of the district shall be maintained.
Well, we're gonna cover all of these tonight, and then we're gonna,
Okay, 6.
we're running through them, we're gonna talk about them. Number 6, home occupations and/or home-based business shall remain limited in scope and shall be clearly incidental and secondary to the residential use of the property.
Mr. Chair.
Go.
So the second part of that, the shall be clearly incidental and secondary, that is, that's sort of state law requirement really is that if it's an accessory use, it has to be secondary to, and I think in fact it's definitely on the list. Probably I think it's the last bullet point. Yeah, the last bullet point. The point is that there has to be a residential use of the property for this to be secondary to, right? And an accessory to. So the first part of that, the limited in scope, that's really the biggest concern with home-based businesses, is the scope of them, and are they going to ruin the neighborhood? And so that is completely vague and subject to interpretation by the selectman and the CEO, right? I mean, this, I think, is the crux of sort of where a bunch of you may have be not happy with this wording.
Well, we're gonna get to work on it, so. Cliff?
The only thing that I see right now at this point that really should be added to that is the words "for agricultural use of the property" instead of just residential. And it goes into the next one as well. When we hit the next one, that'll tie them both together. So, because we are zoned residential agricultural, some properties may be in agricultural use only, but they may have a secondary business on that agricultural property, and but no resident.
Are you saying to me then that I'm a farmer and across the field are my 15 acres that is not a part and parcel to my residence, which is over this side of the street? Or let's just say it's not across the street, it's half a mile down the road, and that's where I grow my tomatoes. That I can put a home-based business on that property. Is that what we're getting at here?
That's what Cliff is proposing, that you don't have to even live in town. You own a piece of
I
property.
didn't say that.
Okay, so anyway, so.
We ain't got to number 6 yet.
So the wording here, the wording here was specific, and
Oh, I remember this.
and I think that it's something we should discuss, right? But I
Start
think
the
that,
timer, start the
I
timer.
think that if you're gonna have a home, I would argue that if you have a home-based business, there's gotta be a home there.
I disagree.
Well, I think that's the crux of that, you know, the point is it secondary to a residential use, which is the typical interpretation of home-based business. Doesn't mean we have to go with it, but that's the typical interpretation of home-based business, is that it's actually based in a home. And the next one is really about that that the person who's running the business actually is there, right, is a resident there, not just some random person.
Well, that, number 6 is difficult, in a way. When you're talking about agricultural products, that's one thing, because it's permissible. If you have a piece of property down the street and you want to sell jelly or jam or corn at a different piece of property. However, in this town, there have people have manufactured things in one location and sold them in stores in other locations in this town, and they weren't agricultural products. I'm not going to get into who did what and what they sold, but believe me, it's gone on before and it goes on now. So, and technically, this would make that illegal if someone wanted to bring that before the select board.
If I understood correctly, you said that they manufactured in one place and sold in a different place. This has not, I don't think this has anything to do about where.
Well, it was a they
where
sold it
sold.
in this town at a home-based business. That was not part of their residence, and there was no residence there.
So that would run afoul of this law.
That's my point, and it's gone on in this town, and it still goes, well, it depends at the time of year, but I'm not gonna get into that.
So
We're not here to cast aspersions on individuals.
But the Supreme Court has said that that's not kosher, right? You can't have an accessory use, which is what the home-based business is, as defined in our zoning. It's an accessory use.
Okay.
You can't have an accessory use without a primary use for it to be accessory to. So you can't have a business just on the only thing on the property is the business, a storefront. That the Supreme Court will say that our zoning cannot say that that's legal without saying that it's a commercial zone.
I'm not arguing the point with you at all. I'm just telling you what has gone on in this town, interestingly enough.
But we have 2 permissible uses in this town. We have an agricultural permissible use, and we have a residential permissible use. And what I'm saying is if I have, we'll go with Gary's 15 acres, and I have 10 acres of it in crop, and I have another 5 acres that I can do something else on, that would make that permissible to allow me to do that.
The point is, this was an agricultural pursuit where this person was selling manufactured products.
That's fine. I think we can talk about what we want the zoning to allow. Right? This is the exact argument we should be
And it all
having.
hinges on number 7 anyway.
It's
So that's
interesting.
the part of it.
Interesting. Sorry.
We make a product at a home-based business,
Yep,
and we can sell that product wherever we want.
wherever you want. Well, if you sell it in the town of Brookfield, you can't sell it at a storefront that isn't a home-based business, because we don't
Why not?
allow that. We don't have a commercial zone, and that's the whole issue here. We don't have a piece of property, we have a storefront that isn't that isn't a residence, and sell your product. But we've done it, is my point.
Right.
But it's not legal according to zoning. But it was done, and it was done innocuously, because people are willing to overlook things, and that's the whole point to this, is that it depends on who is willing to overlook things at the moment, and whose friend is whose friend, and whose friend isn't somebody's friend. That's the way it has always run in this town. And the reason is because this board has never constructed anything that makes it a little fairer and straighter and evener. That's my point. That's why I brought that subject up. It's time to move on to the next one, but that's what we're considering here, all these particular items. So let's go on to number 7. A home occupation or home-based business is an accessory use by the residents of the property and shall be secondary to their residential use of the property. Primary owner or operator of any home occupation or home-based business shall be a property owner of record or lessee of the lot where the on-site operations of the home occupation or home-based businesses are conducted. In addition, this primary owner or operator shall reside in the residence or accessory dwelling unit located on the lot where the on-site operations of the home occupation or home-based business are conducted. If no dwelling exists on the lot, this primary owner or operator shall reside on and be a property owner of record or lessee of a lot abutting the lot where the on-site operations of the home occupation or home-based businesses are conducted.
Yeah, sorry about that.
It's okay.
The intent of that, all of that, is to say the person who's running the home-based business has to live there or on a contiguous lot, right? The idea is that you're not just opening a business some random place in town, right? That's really what that comes down to. I'm sure we can word it better. I did the best I could, but I wanted to cover the adjacent lot situation because we don't want to have people having to do be joining lots together in order to be able to use their land. Lines on a map seem silly. So I was trying to go for, if you own the land, a contiguous chunk of land, and you live on it, then you can have a home-based business anywhere on that land that's contiguous. That was the intent.
I get it, but there are Brookfield's like this too. There are parcels where somebody owns this, then there's another piece of land, and then they own the other piece of land down the street.
Right, and this would keep them from doing a home-based occupation down the street.
Yep, that's what.
For better or worse, right? That's what this wording would disallow.
Well, we all have to digest this and think about it.
And there's lots of people who own more than one parcel in town, right?
Yep.
Clifton, you own 2 acres next to where I was before I bought it, right? It's like, and you lived down here in Lyford.
Unless it's agriculture.
Right, this has nothing with agriculture, right? You can totally have a farm without living there, right? That's totally legal.
Number 8.
No,
Number 8, we're going on.
I wasn't done with 7.
All right, go ahead, we'll give you one last shot.
No, I think the language in number 7 is overly restrictive, and again, if you go back to, if you own 15 acres and a lot down the road, and you've got 10 of them in agricultural use, having a secondary use on that property should be allowed. Now, the way to restrict it is to require that the owner of record, if you are doing the business on that lot, must reside in the town of Brookfield.
Okay.
That way, outside businesses and outside people can't come in and lease the property, create a business, or just rent the property and come in and do the property, or own the property from outside and do it.
Okay, I'm gonna stop you there, I'll tell you why. We're not gonna resolve this, everybody's gonna have an opinion on this, let them think about it, and we'll hash it over again, and come up with language if we think it should be changed or not.
I just want to get my 2 cents.
I hear you, and that's why there's 7 people on the board, so no one person decides anything. Let's just do number 8, and let's see, is there a number 9, Rob? No. That's another piece of paper that George, okay. Okay, let's do number 8, and then we're gonna move on. This is as far as we're taking it tonight.
No, there's one more little piece on the next page.
All right, we'll get there. Number 8, no more than 6 square feet of signage will be used to advertise activities conducted on the premises. This may be two-sided.
So, in a separate section, I think it's D or something like that, I don't know where it is.
That's our ordinance now.
There's the 6 square feet double-sided restriction. I've moved it from wherever it was, which I think is the next, the whole thing is the deletion, right? So this is just basically bringing it into the same spot. Now, I did make a slight change in the wording to say no more than 6 square feet of signboard, as opposed to a sign of 6 square feet or whatever it is. Anticipating that somebody might want to use their 6 square feet on more than one physical sign.
Right.
2 small signs rather than one big sign. I tried to make it a little bit more flexible. You may or may not like that, I don't know.
I like it.
Like Via Lactea. Now this is agricultural, but so it's not affected by this at all. But they've got a sign, and they will hang little signs off of that saying eggs and milk, whatever. It's like people should be able to have flexibility about how they do their signage. That was my only point.
Cliff?
As long as we're doing that and moving it all into one place, then we should add, signs may be lighted as long as the lighting does not shine into the roadway's traffic or into the neighbor's yards or homes.
We can add that, we'll talk about it. Now,
So just a point that,
does this have anything to do with vehicles?
no, it has to do with signs.
So if you have a vehicle with one of those roof things, that's not, falls in this category.
That's
And
part of your
depends
vehicle.
Depends on what the selectmen think, I guess. I don't
Okay.
know. You could have a sign for your farm, right? So we may want some generic restrictions on signs. But the wording that exists in the zoning, I don't have it right in front of me, but I think it talks about home-based businesses, the 6 square feet. I don't know that we have a restriction on signs for a farm.
I'm not worried about the farms. What
Right,
I'm
but,
saying
but,
is
but,
this is-
but the wording that exists now says you can't have an illuminated, or neon, you can't have a neon sign for your, at all, farm or home-based business, right? If we move that and just make it be in home-based businesses, then we won't have any restrictions on signs for farms. That's the only, I mean,
So you're worried about a farm putting up a neon sign?
you know, Eddie's thinking about it. He's like, moose
Yeah.
mountain farm, man, big flashing.
Well,
Flashing cows.
we'll get into all this.
No,
So maybe,
I'm not.
maybe instead of lighting, you could say softly lit. But home-based businesses, you know, just like farms, if you're gonna give them signage, you know, winters get dark around here, so during business hours, they should be able to light their signs.
We'll argue
Maybe you
these
could
points.
Restrict the time frame. You know, signs may not be lit from 7 PM to 7 AM.
We'll argue these
Well, like the
points.
sign, like
We
the
will
sign.
argue these points. Again,
Like the
everybody's got Rob's, there may be a bunch of other things that should go in here. Everybody needs to think about it if they want to participate.
The only thing I'd throw out there is that, as you think about this, think about if there's any things we want to put in the definitions section, the appendix that has all the definitions, right? We may want to define
Yep,
home-based business. Actually have a definition as opposed to just what's here, actually to talk about what it means and stuff like that, so. Or any of these other words, so.
Good stuff.
And this has nothing to do with yard sales, correct?
nothing to do with yard sales, no.
Unless it's an
Not
obligation.
yet.
If you have a yard sale every week, then you would become a home-based business, probably. I mean, there's got to be some legal parameter there.
So-
We're not going to get into that.
So I think that the yard sales fall under the,
Yeah.
referring to the other piece of paper that George was kind enough to, or it was kind of a copy, I think. That goes under the common law or the rule or doctrine of accessory use. And basically, what it boils down to is if everyone knows that people do that as part of being a resident, like mowing your lawn, planting shrubs, things like that, that falls under the common law accessory use, and you're allowed to do those things, even if your zoning is silent on them. The only way you'd not be able to do those things is if you
Made it
prohibit it, explicitly prohibit it. Now, we also have the ability to, what we're talking about here is broadening that, right, beyond what everyone does, you know. And there's a bunch of Supreme Court decisions on this, like there was a case where somebody wanted to build an personal airport or heliport or something like that on their property. And they pointed to some other people who, as part of their residence, had, you know, the place to land their plane or helicopter. And the Supreme Court said that didn't fall under common law. Just because some people did it didn't mean that it was common enough, I guess. So there is interpretation there, but just because somebody does it doesn't mean everyone gets to do it by common law. But things like mowing your lawn, clearly you're allowed to do.
Yeah, I don't know that we're going to cover every single base, but I think we can improve the status quo. So,
Yeah,
okay, I think we've gone over everything,
good.
and let's move on. We'll come back to this next meeting. Everybody's got a piece of it under their belt. Come back at it. Let me find my agenda here. CIP, capital improvement.
We're skipping around?
Well, I brought this up first because it was something that
Wanted to cover it, right?
is, yeah, we're skipping around between A, B, and C, chairman's option, you know.
Yep, okay. Just trying to follow it.
Let's permit, Okay, CIP. Yeah. George gave me a 30-page document. I asked him not to print all 30 pages up, kill all those trees, because some of this is old stuff, and some of it's stuff I submitted last time, and I don't necessarily, I think you've been given a lot of it already, and there's just no reason for the redundancy.
So we'll cover 1 through 5.
I will tell you, I intended to work on this since the last meeting. I have not been able to. I've been flat out, night work, drawing pictures. I've been buried and I just haven't had time to dedicate. I'm gonna try to find some time to dedicate to working on this, because,
If we're not prepared, let's go on to permits.
well, I don't know, has anybody else done anything with CIP?
I did a Google search and I sent the results to you guys. So
Yeah,
I
have that.
I'd encourage you to go back to your mail, and there's a bunch of links to a bunch of CIP documents that towns in New Hampshire have put together. And I also have a link to maybe something for OEP or some part of the government saying
Office of
what a CIP should have and what kinds of things it should cover and whatnot. So anyway, there's a bunch of information in your inbox.
Yeah, I've looked at all those, and, you know, CIP varies depending on the stature and size of a community, you know, what their infrastructure looks like. Some of it becomes unnecessary because there's really no reason to define a lot of things because they don't exist in that size
It's
community.
not that inbox. You check that?
Excuse me?
Anyway,
Will you check that? If you're mailing stuff out?
You want me to mail it to I was just mailing it to whatever address George sends the stuff to.
does anybody have anything?
I'm happy to
Just check it, okay?
make sure that I sent it there.
I haven't seen
You
your
guys
stuff.
done?
Yeah.
Oh, good.
We didn't even start.
Does anybody here have anything to contribute to CIP tonight?
I do.
Go ahead.
My name is Mary Lou McLean, I'm chairman of the Heritage Commission for Fairtown. I guess what I would like to say is that I would expect for this planning commission to include the Heritage Commission and in any of the plans for the CIP.
We've already determined to do that, and the road committee, because the Heritage Commission is obviously the mover behind the report that was done architecturally for the
Right.
building next door.
And you do have a copy of it?
Yes.
I understand.
Yes, I do have a copy of it, I've read it.
And there's also always a copy here in the common office.
Yep.
If anyone else would like to.
And it is our intent to do that, and include the road committee, because those are the two big expenditures outside the school, school expenditures that this town incurs. We are not moving on too far with this tonight.
I understand, but could myself or as the chairman be notified when you are going to be discussing it?
Yeah, that's very easily done. We're going to work on it as a group at this table, but it's not something you can do in the forum that we just did for cottage industry, because there's a lot of technical stuff that goes into a CIP.
I understand that.
I've done a certain amount of it on my own or before as a committee chairman, and I let it die because I don't want to get into the reasons I didn't finish it. But in order to get anything constructive done, you have to do the work and bring it here and then work on it together. Somebody has to do a certain amount of work, because you're not going to sit here and create this stuff at this table. It just will never happen. And I was going to work on it, but, a certain amount of time in a day.
I have the same issue.
Yeah, and
I need to create more hours. So here's what I would suggest. Why don't you, at the point at which you're a little further along with this, I would request that the Heritage Commission be notified of the meeting, and also we can bring to you and do some of the work for you. Allow us to do that for you.
Certainly.
Sure.
Are you talking, what kind of the work? Are you talking about mostly the buildings?
Most of the, yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, yeah, and there's a certain amount of native talent in the town. I read the architecture report, and some of it's a little over the edge in terms of expense.
We agree with that.
And there are other ways to solve many of those problems that aren't quite as expensive.
We would tend to agree with that, but would want to make sure that, especially for the townhouse, that it be maintained as a historic structure, which it is.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, everybody in this town agrees with that, I think. Yeah. The point of that is, though, the work has to be done and brought here for everybody to help work on. But somebody's got to, you know, to sit here and come up with something for 7 people is pretty rough to do.
I understand.
So, and that's my fault. I apologize. Anyway, but we'll do that, okay?
Thank you.
And I'm gonna try to work on it this month because I'm not drawing pictures right now. I'm finished for a while.
So I'd be happy to, well, actually, my email address is on the orange sheet for the town,
Okay,
but I can give it to you now if you
why
want.
don't you give me, hold on.
So the key to my email address is that I used to work for United Way. So it's UW, Marilou, MARILOU, @hotmail.com.
Okay. I'm gonna send you something. I don't know if it's here or not. Yeah, I can give it to you.
While you're looking for that, so I think that, if I don't quote me on this, but I believe that I read that in one of the RSAs that you guys are actually required by law to assist us.
Yes, we are.
Yep.
I wasn't gonna go that far. I was gonna ask politely, Rob.
And I think the selectmen would be rightfully disappointed in the CIP. They're the customers for the CIP. They'd be rightfully disappointed if it didn't reflect what your projects were, right? What your capital related stuff was.
Yes. And I would also just mention, as town treasurer, I also have taken an inventory of the equipment and things in this building for the office stuff, so that probably is something you'll be addressing and could give you that list as well.
Make a copy of this for her. In that, I didn't address the schoolhouse repairs, but I have given Ernie, when he was selectman,
Yes,
what
I
would
have
take
a copy of that.
to keep that. Oh, you have a copy of what I gave Ernie? Then you
Yes,
might have that, too. George, if don't make that, let Mary Lou look at it. Don't kill trees. If she already has that,
I have what you gave Ernie. Yes, I have what, yes.
okay. And there's also another thing I gave Ernie about what could be done to make that schoolhouse structurally stable that would prevent it from falling off the end of the building, which it may do on its own one of these nights under a snow load. But, well, anyway, we'll get into it another point.
Okay,
We're not gonna do it tonight.
thank you.
Thanks, George, I'm sorry I did that. Okay,
That was easy.
Thank you, sir.
yeah, you're welcome. Thank you for the input. We will not leave you out of this, promise. And we're not gonna leave the road committee out of it too, because they live with the roads. That includes
Who you know?
road agent. Okay, permits and clarification of different type of applications. Let's do it quick. That's not too bad. Do we have our, we went through this already, and there really wasn't too much to do, but there were a few eliminations. Let me find that.
Didn't we clean that up last
We
time?
cleaned it up, yeah, but we didn't vote it into existence. We just did some work on it and then left it on the table.
Oh, we did.
Well, let's get it out and look at it. You had all yours?
I wasn't at the last meeting, so I don't know what the changes were.
All I remember.
Gary, is that what you're looking for?
Huh?
Is that what you're looking for? Your 3-ring binder?
No. No, I've got them put aside here. It's a matter of location. That's all. I know what I did with them. That's what I did. I put them away, never touched them again. Put them away. Things are going.
Congratulations.
Oh, it was a chore. I tell you.
You tell me and the guys in Poland.
Huh?
You tell me and the guys in Poland. Wherever they're watching.
Shame on me, I can't find it. Which I put them on my desk to work on. Yeah. 100% sure I did. George,
Yes.
you're gonna have to do this one for me because I don't see it.
Is this at the end of the,
I don't have mine, are on my
is
desk.
that it? It's at
No,
end
not
of
the appendices. No, that's something else.
Okay.
Remember we handed out everybody 2 copies last time? Mine's sitting on my desk at home, I'm not gonna run home and get it.
Would you like to declare a recess, and then maybe I can see if I...
Yeah, why don't we take 5 minutes and grab those 2 forms again? I apologize for my lack of coordination, we're having a recess. We got out, took a shower, came here, forgot to grab them.
20th, I think.
She's gone, too bad. Okay, meeting is now back in session. It isn't really here, where is it?
Page 2.
Page 2.
C.
I gotta find it, hold on. Right there. Okay. Let's, seeing that we all had this conversation and the general consensus is what it is, let's go through these things again and see if we're all on the same page with them. Because we can make, this is pretty simple housekeeping chore really, is what it comes down to. We can get this done and put it to bed without too much trouble. So we'll get B, Ed Nason recommended number 7 of the checklist, page 32 of 49. State, planning board endorsement, replace in the lower right-hand corner with the 7 lines. Okay, that's not part of this, but
Yeah, that's the checklist.
So what George handed out, at least for me, if I'm looking at the right thing, is page number 7.
yeah,
7A, 8, 8A, but this, the minutes are referring to page 32 of 49.
and 33 of 49 in the next one, which is, I gotta go here for that.
So is this-
Let me get my mind on this.
Is this just the renumbering of the pages that has taken effect?
What I had
No.
done, I'm sorry, I had removed the subheading there. These numbers right here that you see on here, I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman, I should ask you for your permission, I apologize. Should I go on? Should I keep on, continue?
Yeah, go ahead.
These numbers here are with the comprehensive application form, which is Appendix B. There was also, originally under this, was the heading for the minute pages. So it said 32, 33, 34, as far as the minute pages. So it had both numbering systems.
Got it.
I removed that just now because I thought it would cause problems.
Okay, but we're looking at the right page.
Yes, we are.
Okay. Mr. Chairman, how would you like to do, you want to just go through these all and have a motion at the end? Or you
Yeah,
wanna
let's
do- wanna do a
look at
motion
them and get
per-
them back in our heads again real quick. Number 28 of the checklist, number 28. We already looked at, we just looked at number 7, that there should be 7 lines for everyone on the planning board.
Yeah.
That's a good idea. That's a pretty simple thing to do. Does anybody disagree with that?
No.
So just to be clear, we're on the subdivision plat requirement checklist, item number
Yes,
7. We're going
correct.
to add the words with
Contains
7
7
lines.
With 7.
With 7 lines.
You want to just collect these all together as one, at the end, we'll do one motion? Is that?
Yes.
Okay, got it.
Yeah, that's the best way. Saves time. And then, number 28, let's look. That should be deleted. I see no reason for that there. Required statement for the town of Brookfield doesn't refer to what, why, when, or where. It's just something that should be removed as an item. It probably came from another thing in another town. There's something Bill Gaver put together and referred to something, but it doesn't refer to anything that I could see in any of this site plan, this checklist, so.
I agree.
Yep.
So we're just gonna put a line through it and get rid of it. Okay, number 6, site plan review checklist. Okay, go on to that. That's number 2B.
So we're okay with leaving 8 and 9 as they are?
Yeah.
I think that was the end of the conversation, was
Yeah,
actually.
that's where we left it. We went through all of these. And these are the idea was to make it so that it was not an inconvenience unnecessarily imposed on someone like the Moose Mountain Plan Review had some things in there were totally ridiculous to ask them to do, like locations and elevations of all the buildings across the street. So and that's coming up pretty quick, actually, the site plan review checklist. But anyway, number 6. Shape, size, height, location, use of existing and proposed structures located on the site and within 200 feet of the site.
Sentence should end at the first site.
Yes,
Crossing out.
located on the site.
Yep. And delete "and
Within 200 feet of the site. Because those people are gonna wind up at the hearings anyway. I don't see it'd be fine in inner city location because they're gonna affect things, traffic flow, everything else.
Right.
Okay, so are we all in agreement on that? I think so.
We're removing and within 200 feet of the site.
Correct.
Okay.
Number 7. Location, name, and widths of any existing and proposed roads on the property and within 200 feet of the site.
Same thing.
That's not an inconvenience for anybody. We can leave that there without,
Right.
And it would include any roads for any subdivision.
Right.
Yeah.
One's structures and
That's fine.
one is roads.
there are no sidewalks
A subdivision might have.
Yeah, but that was the end result of that conversation, as Rob just said, that was believed to be pertained to if you're proposing a subdivision with sidewalks in it.
Yeah, that's what we discussed.
Or,
last
or,
time.
Moose Mountain wanted to put sidewalks leading up to their
Yeah.
lodge or along their streets or whatever, right? Inside their property.
Well, we had the conversation of what was difference between a sidewalk and a pathway.
Yeah, sidewalk is something adjacent to the roadway.
Right.
And we're not forcing anybody to do that in Brookfield with a subdivision. So,
But if he's proposing them, then you want to
But
see it.
this is a site plan review checklist.
leave it alone.
I think so.
Leave it alone. It doesn't hurt. If they're gonna propose them, they can
Yeah.
list them there, designate them, delineate them on the site plan, I agree. And that looks like,
I think we got it.
yeah, that looks like everything that needs to be done.
I just want to make sure I understand number 7, there's no changes to number 7, is that right?
Right.
On which number, on
On number
site?
7 on page 8.
Are we taking off 200 feet, or are we leaving that on that one?
I think we're taking,
Taking that, number 6, page 8, number 6, deleting "and within 200 feet of the site."
And, yeah, I got that. And number 7, same?
Nope.
No, leaving,
Okay, that's what I have. Okay, thank you.
leaving 7 and 8 unchanged.
Okay, thank you.
And I would move that the board accept the amendments to the subdivision plat requirement checklist
Second.
and site plan review checklist.
I'll second that.
Mr. Chairman, point of order. We can't, I don't think that we, according to our rules of procedure,
We can't.
we can't do that.
No.
We can accept as it were.
We have to hold the hearing on it.
No, we
No,
have
we
to
have to
have
wait.
it we have to have it in hand for a certain number of days.
Yeah,
right?
15 days or something like that.
Oh, for
10 days.
public review, you're right.
Well, and for our own review even. I know we're here, but.
For our own review, yeah.
So,
Accept it as a working document.
That's right. Let's make them like that motion.
I move that we accept it as a working document. Thank you.
second.
Yeah. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Any other discussion? Done.
It's a little late for discussion.
Yeah, yeah, that's right. I'm a little out of order with it, or a little, yeah, the wrong order. Time's 8:30.
Could be.
Okay, we're finished with old business for this evening. New business. I kept the home-based business thing under old business because it was a tabled thing and it's back, so I don't have any new business. And there's no walk-in, so there's nothing else anybody else has for
There's
new
something.
business here. Do you?
Want to, next time, maybe open some discussion on the playground committee and a possibility of a town beach.
Would you like to put that on the agenda?
Yeah,
We have discussed town beach before.
How does that pertain to the planning board?
It's land use.
Hmm?
It's land use.
Yeah.
So it'd be town beach on private property?
No. We,
We're not, if it's town property, it's not subject to zoning. I don't think.
That's true.
It's not.
That's true.
but no, but I don't think he's, talking about zoning.
We're
I
talking
think he's
about-
talking about the creation of it.
the possibility, any resources
I
available.
don't think he's talking about whether it's in violation or not.
Well, if it's in creating of, that's not our department.
Yeah, I don't know what we can do.
It would be the selectmen and the town body voting in March.
Yeah, we can't really make an ordinance to create a town beach, that's for sure.
We
could-
tried,
we could
but
put it into
Eminent
our,
domain.
we could put it in our capital improvements plan.
Yep.
Well, I'm thinking it's
our
gonna
master
be
plan,
put in
we already did our
Master
master
plan.
plan.
What was the other
The-
point?
the playground.
Playground.
Put it on ballot by petition.
But again, it's not zoning, it's not this board.
Well, still, to force the selectmen to do
To
something.
do something about
You
it.
could put a petition warrant article up.
Right, but that wouldn't go through the planning board.
No, he's
As-
just,
As a,
Yeah,
as a private individual.
Sure. Even if a private
I don't think it's
individual
within
wants to
our
do the zoning thing, it would come to us
purview.
for us to either give it a thumbs up or thumbs down. It would
I
still
don't
go
think we
on,
can
but
do it.
I-
The only way that it does fall under your purview in the planning board is through your CIP.
Well, then we're only suggesting how the selectmen might empower the finances and that kind of business.
Right.
We're only giving them advice on how to pay for
Well,
it.
It's gonna be constant improvement.
It's a stunt.
So if you put it in there, if you put it in, a possibility of it, you put it in your CIP.
It's hard when, first of all, you have to find a place to do it, and somebody's got to analyze how expensive it would be to do in order to put something concrete in a CIP. But anyway,
State does, but you can't get there.
we could talk about this, but I don't see any reason to go on with it at the moment. Any member, that was a member comment or new business?
Well, it wasn't a business.
Okay, because that's number 8. We're getting to number 9 now, which is member comments.
Last planning board meeting, I volunteered to draft a letter to the SRPC about the presentation they were supposed to give. Was that letter sent out, and has there been anything returned to us?
The letter was sent out, right? When?
It was not sent.
You requested at the meeting to see the letter.
I saw it, it was sent to me,
Okay, I was.
and I said fine.
Oh, I'm sorry, I did not get that message. I'm sorry.
Oh,
I apologize for that.
Oh, that's okay, I just wanted to make sure.
I said fine to you,
I was
let's,
just
let's
gonna-
by all means send it out.
Okay.
Please do it immediately.
Okay, I did not get that message.
Yeah, that was a good letter, well written.
I was just gonna,
Was
I
that
wanted
right?
to make sure I didn't derail.
Huh?
Was that right?
No, it was fine, and you sent it to me, and my reply was very well done, and I thought you were sending it out. I didn't know the administrative assistant was sending it out, because I said, yeah, go ahead, Ed, it's in your, well, I figured you would send it, because you're the representative, but that's fine, whatever, let's just make sure.
Let it come from the board.
Huh?
Let it come from
It
the
has
board
more weight
rather
if it comes
Yeah,
from the board.
rather than the individual.
Well, he'd be writing it as a member of the board, is the board speaking. I mean,
Yep,
that-
so if
that
we're gonna do it as a board, it has to go through you or George.
Yep.
Our rules of procedure.
So we have to sign the letter?
You should.
The point is, if I asked him to act as the agent of doing this, it's gone through the board. I don't know that I have to sign it personally.
It means more if you do.
Yeah,
Even
that's
if Ed
Oh, boy,
wrote it on your
what a power
behalf.
trip, huh?
Hey,
All right,
you're the one with the
I'll
power.
sign it, Ed. I'm honored and privileged to do so.
I mean, the timing works out good.
It was a good one, good letter.
Well, the delay wouldn't be a problem because they've been doing stuff with the scenic byways and the executive director just had a grandchild, so it's not gonna put anybody out. I just wanted to make sure that it was sent out before I sent it.
When can I get a copy to sign? Tonight?
Yes.
Good, we'll do it,
Because
and
I
get
see
it
them
off.
on Friday.
Can you hand deliver it if he signs it tonight?
That's, well, it should be mailed also.
It'd be better, yes, an official.
Power trip?
Well, you just told me that it should be signed by me.
Mail it.
It should be delivered by the post office.
Set up.
Yeah, it's pretty powerful, hand delivered,
A year from now, I'm gonna be relegated to infamy, you know?
Draw your own stamp and draw your own.
Is there a reason why we can't, or can we get a copy of that attached to the minutes?
The letter?
Or is there a reason
Yeah.
not to?
No, there's no problem with it. Why don't we just hand out everybody a copy? Why don't we do this? Will everybody agree to stay around for a few minutes till George does that? I'll adjourn the meeting and
Yeah.
let him finish that up, and then we'll all take a copy home. And
But it'll be part of the minutes as part of the,
We'll
part of the
attach
record,
it.
part of the public record of the.
I'm requesting that you attach that to the minutes.
Or I don't think you can close the meeting and then do it. The meeting needs to stay open because it's official business.
Yeah, we can't discuss.
You mean you can't staple it?
You can't sign and pass out as a group once
I'm
the
the
meeting's
recess.
closed.
I can sign a letter outside the meeting.
I know you can.
That's all I'm
But
doing.
you've asked us all to stay. It's just a point of order. You could leave the meeting running and then close.
All right, the
out.
meeting is running, and let's do it. We instead of arguing about it.
We want
Yes.
to attach it to the minutes.
Why don't you just read the letter? That way it's on record. And then,
Everybody else knows
and
exactly.
then we'll just get the paper copy whenever, then you could adjourn the meeting.
Yeah, it's excellent.
That's,
I'm still going to, moment, print that out.
Do you have a copy?
You're on the clock.
Your moment's half done.
go print it out. Well, wait, it's not gonna make any difference, 8:30 or 8:32.
The,
Yes,
the executive board for the SRPC, you met the chairman here, Lou Vita.
yep,
They're meeting at 8 o'clock on Friday also.
really, where?
That executive, at the Stratford Regional
Okay.
Planning Commission down in Rochester. They also watch the videos, so.
They watch this video?
Absolutely.
Doesn't everybody?
I'm hoping.
They're watching our video this evening?
Everybody
They
in
watch
Poland.
everything.
Everybody in Poland.
Well, that's good, I'm glad to see that.
We're setting state precedents, you know.
Eastern Europe.
Bucking the system.
That's right. The rebels win the cause.
How
Hillary told
I
me.
don't think it's us, I think it's Ed. We just tolerate it.
He has a cause.
That's usually happens.
Yeah, I'm the one that you're gonna send the archers in to shoot, though.
Oh, we don't mind that so much.
They'll only have so much time.
Thanks.
Leader of the sovereign state of Chickaroni.
Remember, you don't have to outrun the bear, just run faster than the slowest person.
Well, could it get any bigger? We're not sending it that size. Oh, thank you.
That's so you can.
Well, then, okay, this is so I can read it with my
Getting older.
my faraway glasses, all right. Stratford Regional Planning Commission, 150 Wakefield Street, Suite 12, Rochester, New Hampshire, 03867, regarding the rescheduled SRPC GSF presentation. The Brookfield Planning Board is looking forward to rescheduling your presentation of the Granite State Future Agreement. Your professional advice on this matter is requested as per RSA 36:45-58 to discuss the local and regional impact of this initiative. If you are unable to attend our regularly scheduled planning meeting, the board can schedule a special meeting on a date that is mutually agreeable. Respectfully submitted to Brookfield Planning Board. Gerald Chickaroni Jr., Chairman, Brookfield Planning Board, I guess.
Outstanding.
Now, we all know what's on there. Meeting is adjourned. Thank you.
Another great meeting.
Are you being sarcastic?
I'm loving this.
Thanks for being.
You know,